Wrong event, sorry. My glasses on, I'm old. I'm old stalling.
At the village guard salute.
Absolutely, there we have it. And I can see now.
Hallelujah.
Hey, that was my song.
It's an honor to stand here before you tonight to deliver your keynote. I'm amazed to stand before you because I've been to several of the LLCs, and 19 years it's been going, providing a service to our community. To the board, I want to say personally thank you. To the volunteers, everybody who's involved with the event, thank you. If you're only an attendee and you see the volunteers or you see somebody involved with the event, please tell them thank you. It means a lot to them. And if you've ever produced an event, they're already planning for next year. So a little thank you goes a long way. So I look out over the audience, and I often wonder why in the hell we give keynote addresses. You know, most of the time it ends up pissing somebody off. But in my opinion, that's the exact reason why you give keynotes. It actually is supposed to actually make somebody challenge their convictions, make them think outside the box, make them rethink where they're currently at. The keynote tonight hopefully will not do that. I know you're disappointed. But I did take it from 45 minutes down to about 15. So, keynotes are very hard for me to do because I tend to ramble. I tend to go off script. I tend to never say anything that is written down. I can guarantee you tonight I'll do the same thing. I'll go totally off script and just talk like I always do. You know, I'm from, I grew up in Arkansas, so I have a tendency to talk with my hands, and, you know, that's just the way I am. So if I go off script, bear with me. I will get back on. I'll just have to find where I left off at. So now we start. I look around the room and I wonder why many people choose to be a part of the leather community. I know it's all ages, genders, and sexual identities. Have you ever asked yourself why you chose to be a part of this community, knowing you will never be fully accepted by the greater communities because we don't fit their norms? So tonight, I ask you, what drew you to the leather community? Oh, by the way, you are the only person who can answer that. I cannot and will not guess, analyze, or prophesize your reasoning. It's your decision. Why should you care what anybody else thinks about your reason? It's your reason. For those of you who are new to the leather community, I'm not going to use this keynote to heap knowledge upon you about the community or teach you a huge history lesson about something many of you should learn on your own. This is only a 3-day event. There just isn't enough time for even my perspective on the history of this community. There has been much written about it and much said about it. And if you really want to know, there's homework to be done. I encourage you to do it. Please remember that if you do research or you ask others, some of the stories you hear are true. Some are made up, and sometimes, oftentimes, the truth lies in between. You can decide if you're interested, and you will find the truth. There are people out there who will tell you what they know. There are places you can go to do research. It's not a bad thing to question things if you really want to find out the answer. But for now, I'm going to focus on my 30-plus year journey in this community and see if you can relate to some of the past via my perspective. Keep in mind that I'll skim over some areas very quickly, but I do have opinions and I'm sure I will comment. And if you really know me or really heard me speak before, you know I have a tendency to get on my proverbial soapbox. And that'll probably happen tonight too. So please join me in a quick sprint down memory lane. I hope you enjoy it. For me, 3 decades ago, I saw the leather community as simply that, individuals wearing leather. Somewhere in the last 20 years, it's kind of morphed into a community for all those who live in the many different kinks and fetish lifestyle. The change has not been easy for some. Some so much so that they chose to leave the community. We can dream, we can fantasize about the past, but the past is the past and it's gone. It will not remanifest itself. That's the reality of evolution. Think of it this way. Today is only a day away from the past. I will leave you to decide if the change has been good for our community. For me, I think evolution is a good thing. Because of the evolution, there's many who not only left, but they're also taking sabbaticals from the leather community. I, to this day, fail to see how any person can quit something that's ingrained into their soul and into their personal being. In my opinion, our community will always be changing and evolving, or at least I hope so. Each generation will have to accept the change, join it, or move aside because we will continue to grow and evolve with or without you. As you can tell, I don't think taking a break or backing away is a good thing. Your involvement is not only wanted, it's necessary. For many of my generation, we lived through the mass AIDS epidemic which wiped out and took away the lives of so many of our leaders, our mentors, our families, our friends. Many of us were forced into the spotlight to pick up and continue fighting for a community and a lifestyle. Many of us were not ready to take that lead nor step into the spotlight. But again, out of necessity, we tried, we learned, and we survived. Being involved in and fighting for things you believe in is never a bad thing. Back then, the fight for preservation, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
All right, okay. I wasn't sure if you're nodding off or not, so. Back then, the fight for preservation in the leather community wasn't only in the large cities, but it was also in the smaller cities, much like it is today. I mention this because I have a plea for everybody in this room. It's my hope that you will go back to your own communities and try to capture the histories of the generations, especially the people who came before you. Hold on to those stories and pass them along to others. If not, our forebears will not be remembered and our stories will be lost forever. Please learn their contributions. Learn their mentors, their battles that were fought not only for their community, but for themselves. I believe one of the biggest challenges we face today is tied to history. Some individuals in our community would seek to dismantle history and create something that is far from the actual truth. Our history is not based on the perfect novel. It doesn't have to be homogenized to be real. It doesn't have to be pretty to be ours. It simply has to be truthful. Our community has to learn to embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly of our past. Accept the truth, but don't change it. In my opinion, if we lose our real history, we're going to lose ourselves. So much for my fast jaunt down my history. Let me talk about some of the things that I think has changed for the better. On top of the list is something I'm very passionate about. It's the women. Their place in our history is finally getting the recognition they deserve for their many contributions that helped carry this community for decade after decade after decade.
You got it.
A little personal story. Women in the leather community have and will always have a special place in my heart. They were the ones who helped me understand my inner self. They kept me grounded. I was and still an inquiring why person. I'm forever asking questions. Back then, the men, they grew tired of my constant questions. The women never did, although their stern looks actually served a purpose when I asked questions at the wrong time. My leather sister showed me how to be passionate, patient, show emotions, and be proud of myself. For the record, I believe I'm a prouder leather-wearing gay man because of many leather women who was part of my life. I will always be there for them, just as they were for me. While talking about gender, let me step off on that soapbox I mentioned before and talk about small-mindedness. Let me talk to you about the trans community. Honestly, I was never exposed to the trans community before the mid-'80s. Never heard the term. Hell, I grew up in Oklahoma. I thought that you dressed like a woman or a man, that's who you were, regardless to what gender you were born to. I didn't question what was under the clothing, except in my sexual fantasies. But that's another story. I wish I could understand why our community has a hard time accepting people as a gender they chose. I fail to understand why we impose titles on the trans community or any segments of our community as a way to further identify differences. Why do we refer to men and women who are trans as bio-born, cisgendered, or any other term other than a man or a woman? It makes no sense. None. My common sense dictates if somebody chooses to live their life as a man or a woman, they are a man or a woman. Period. They are a man or a woman. Is my approach too simplistic? I can tell it is for most. There are a few other positive changes I see today. We have allowed our communities to welcome others who may not have a home elsewhere. We continue to fight for human rights with greater passion. We continue to live life as we choose, even though now we have to band together even stronger than before to deal with the fights of the ugly conservative politics and bills passing through state legislatures. We continue to make a family structure that suits each of our needs. And I could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to bore you with all that. So earlier I asked you why you became part of the community. Now you're probably wondering why I became part of the community, because I ask myself that all the time. My initial attraction to the leather community was purely physical. All honesty aside, it was purely physical. The men were hot and self-defined. I viewed the community as one of the last bastions of rebelhood for the gay men. I felt that the community was respected by some and feared by others. And by the way, fear is still exciting to me. I was lucky to make friends who invited me in. They encouraged me. They bitch slapped me when I screwed up, and they loaned me their wings of protection while encouraging my growth. Sometimes growth was difficult, really difficult. I learned to be patient. I felt that if I wanted to be a part of something that gave me an opportunity to feel like I belonged, then I would not disappoint it. I would embrace it, love it, contribute to it, and help reinforce the foundation for its future. My journey went and continues to go. Like the way of a gravel road that turns into the paved one before it becomes a superhighway, I realized that my community, our community, was a simple family trying to coexist within a much larger community. Why am I part of this community? Because it fits me. It speaks to me. I love everything it stands for. I can say that I'm happy to be a part of something that makes me feel good about myself. Anybody in this community should feel the same. If you don't, you need to question why you're a part of this community. Even though our community has changed and the umbrella has become larger than the one that I started with, it's still my community. Larger, bigger, and more beautiful. After all these years, yes, I still believe in my community. I still believe in our acceptance of differences, because those differences are what makes us unique individuals. Unlike some in the community who are turning away from our community, I will not. I may back away at some point in the next 30 years, because I'll be a young 85 years old, but I will never quit. Not until my community tells me to quit. One cannot quit something that is part of them. And for those of you who I hear saying they've lost their community, well, you need to look harder, because it's still there for you. 30 years from now, I hope to still be fighting the new causes that brings greater acceptance for our subcultures, that has helped mold my life, a life that I love and I enjoy. In closing, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to give this keynote. And I want to ask you once again, why are you part of this community? Only you can come up with the answer to the questions. Please do some soul searching, because you need to know it. You need to be able to share with somebody when they ask. Because invariably this community will be changing, as it has in the last 30 years. Change is coming, and it's inevitable. And for when we only know that reason, can we stick together as a family for years to come. I hope you all have a great weekend. It's a pleasure being here, and I look forward to a continued success for LLC 20.